Ma'am, the dining room is for hotel guests only. Ga, I have a reservation. Dinner for 7 o'clock. The name is Beaumont. Ga Beaumont. She typed one letter, stopped, looked up. We don't have anything under that name. Ga, check again. Beaumont, Gaz, I checked. There's nothing. I'm going to need you to move along before you block the entrance for actual guests. Ga, I'd like to speak with your manager. Ga, he's busy. Ga, he'll want to be unbuzzied for this one. Ga, ma'am. Security? Can you come to the front, please? We have a situation. Ga, ma'am, please don't make this difficult. Ga, stop. Nobody touches her. She owns this hotel. 45 seconds. That was all it took to unravel 11 years of a woman's career. Have you ever walked into a room you already owned and been told to leave? 4 hours earlier, the sky above Atlanta was the color of old brass. Late October, the kind of evening where the air smells like wood smoke and coming rain and the last of something warm before winter arrives and means it. On the 14th floor of a glass building in Midtown, a woman named Celeste Beaumont stood in front of her bathroom mirror, deciding how she wanted to enter a room she had purchased 3 months ago. On the hook beside the door hung the navy dress, the one that made maitre d's move faster and sommeliers pour generously. Beside it, draped over the chair back, was a cardigan the color of oatmeal, worn at the left cuff, bought at a consignment shop on a Tuesday in 2009 because it was soft and she was cold and the tag said $4. She had kept it longer than some friendships. She reached for the cardigan. Celeste Beaumont had spent the first half of her life being underestimated and the second half understanding that this was actually a competitive advantage. She was 51 years old, 5'4", and wore her hair natural and close-cropped, the way her mother had kept hers and her mother's mother before that. She did not look like the cover of a business magazine. That was, on most occasions, entirely by design. 12 years ago, she had been the head of acquisitions for a mid-size hospitality group in Charlotte, the woman they sent to markets other people wrote off. Rust Belt cities, overlooked neighborhoods, properties that had been beautiful once and then forgotten again. She had an eye for what a building could become if someone believed in it past the point where belief was comfortable. Then the firm got bought, the acquiring company brought in their own people, and Celeste's office was quietly handed to a man who called her darling in meetings and who had never once found value in a building that wasn't already obvious. She took her severance, her files, and 14 years of contacts, and she went home to her kitchen table in Atlanta. What she built from there was not loud. She did not take meetings at rooftop bars or post announcements on LinkedIn or give keynotes at hospitality conferences. She found partners who were patient and properties that were patient, and she put them together the way you put a puzzle together in a room where the light is good and no one is rushing you. 1 renovation became 3. 3 became a portfolio. The portfolio became a holding company she named Meridian South, which operated 8 hotels across the Southeast, and which most people in the industry had heard of, but almost none of them could have picked its founder out of a lineup. She liked it that way. The Alderton Hotel on Peachtree was not one of hers. It had been until 3 months ago, a competitor. A century-old property with original plasterwork and the best bar program in Midtown, and a management culture that had been, politely put, inconsistent. Less politely, it had logged 4 discrimination complaints in 2 years, settled 2 quietly, ignored 1, and lost 1 in a way that cost them a number the newspapers loved to print. The board had decided to sell. Celeste had decided to buy. The acquisition closed on a Thursday. The public announcement was scheduled for Monday. That left her 1 weekend. Her grandmother used to say that you learn the character of a kitchen by whether the cook cleans up when no one is watching. Celeste had her own version of this. You learn the character of a hotel by how it treats the person who doesn't look like they can afford to be there. So she put on the oatmeal cardigan and her good walking shoes, and she called her daughter. Simone was 31 and lived 10 minutes away and thought her mother had invented the concept of being difficult on purpose. They had been having dinner together every third Sunday for the last 4 years, which meant Simone had eaten at most of the restaurants in Midtown Atlanta and had strong opinions about all of them. She arrived at 6:45 in a yellow coat, kissed her mother on the cheek, and said, "You're wearing that." "It's a cardigan," Celeste said. "It's $4, Simone said. "It was," Celeste agreed. "Let's go." The Aldertons sat on a corner lot with a canopied entrance and a doorman who opened the door for a man in a suit without being asked, and then watched Celeste and Simone approach without moving. He was young. He had the particular expression of someone who has been given a small amount of authority and has decided it is a large amount. He let the door close, and then, when they reached it, opened it again at a speed that communicated he had decided to be generous. The lobby smelled like cedar and orange peel, and the specific warm hum of a building that had been beautiful for 100 years and knew it. The floors were original herringbone oak. Above the check-in desk hung a chandelier made from reclaimed window glass, commissioned by the previous owners, in a moment of aesthetic ambition that Celeste had privately admired even before she owned the place. The restaurant occupied the east wing, separated from the lobby by a low walnut partition and a hostess stand that had been staffed for the past 3 years by a woman named Whitney Langford. Whitney Langford was 34 years old, a decade into the hospitality industry, and operated the entrance to the Aldertons' dining room the way some people operate a border crossing. She had a gift for reading a room that was genuine and impressive and entirely in the service of a hierarchy she had constructed and maintained with remarkable consistency. Men in suits got the corner tables without asking. Women in work dresses got the good booths near the window. Everyone else got assessed in the first 4 seconds and placed accordingly. She was good at her job in the same way that a lock can be good at keeping things out. When Celeste and Simone came through the walnut partition at 2 minutes to 7, Whitney looked up from her stand. It took her approximately 3 seconds to complete her calculation. "Ma'am." Her voice was pleasant and firm, the voice of someone who has had this conversation before and has found a version of it that works. "The dining room is for hotel guests only." Celeste stopped. "We have a reservation. Dinner for 2, 7 o'clock. The name is Beaumont." Whitney's fingers moved to her keyboard, 1 keystroke. She looked up. "We don't have anything under that name. Check again." Celeste's voice was even. "Beaumont." Whitney typed 2 letters this time. "I checked." Her eyes moved over Celeste once, briefly, and then settled somewhere past her left shoulder, the way eyes do when they have already made a decision and are simply waiting for the conversation to catch up. "There's nothing. I'm going to need you to move along before you block the entrance for actual guests." Besides Celeste, Simone made a sound that was not quite a word. "I'd like to speak with your manager," Celeste said. "He's busy. He'll want to be unbuzzied for this one." Whitney's expression did not change exactly, but it sharpened. She reached beneath the stand and pressed a button. "Security, can you come to the front, please?" She looked at Celeste with what appeared to be genuine patience. "We have a situation." Simone turned to her mother. "Mom, it's all right," Celeste said. She said it the way you say things you have said many times before, the words worn smooth from use. The dining room hummed behind the partition. Celeste could hear glasses, low conversation, the particular cadence of a room full of people who believed they were exactly where they belonged. A table near the partition had gone quiet. A man in a blazer was watching over the top of his menu. He had the look of someone who would not intervene, but would also not look away. A woman in a white apron appeared from the direction of the bar. Her name tag read Dija. She was younger than Simone, with a braid over one shoulder and the particular steady watchfulness of someone who had worked the floor long enough to know when something was wrong before it became loud. She came around the bar end, crossed the dining room entrance, and arrived at Celeste's side with a glass of water. "It's a cold night," she said. Her voice was quiet enough that Whitney couldn't hear it. "Can I get you anything while you sort this out?" Celeste took the glass. "Thank you." Deja stood for a moment longer than she needed to, Then she went back to the bar, but she did not go to the far end. She stayed at the near end. She did not look at her phone. Whitney had not moved. She had the posture of a woman who is very confident that time is on her side. The security officer arrived, a man named Rupert, broad-shouldered and unhurried, with reading glasses tucked in his breast pocket and the expression of someone who would very much like to go back to wherever he had been before this. He looked at Celeste. He looked at Simone. He looked at their shoes, which were good, and at their coats, which were better than good, and at the cardigan, which was neither, and he reached a conclusion that seemed to make him uncomfortable. "What's the issue, Whitney?" he said. "This woman claims she has a reservation. She doesn't. She's been asked to move along twice." "I have a reservation," Celeste said again, "without heat, under Beaumont." "You're welcome to check the system." Rupert looked at Whitney. "Already checked," Whitney said. She glanced toward the entrance. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step outside now, or Rupert is going to escort you." Her tone had gone very gentle, the gentleness of someone who has found that gentleness, deployed at the right moment, lands harder than anything else. "You understand." She did not say it like a question. Celeste looked at her for a long moment. The herringbone floor caught the chandelier light. The bar hummed. Simone's jaw was tight. "I'd like your name," Celeste said. "For my records." Whitney almost smiled. She reached up and unclipped the name tag from her lapel, the way someone holds up something they are proud of. "Whitney Langford. 2 letters, 6 letters." She set it on the stand between them. "Make sure you get it right." "I will," Celeste said. "Spelling matters, especially on paperwork." Something moved behind Whitney's eyes. She pressed it down. She looked at Rupert. Rupert did not want to do what he was about to do. But Rupert had a daughter in college and a truck payment and a supervisor who had told him twice this quarter that he needed to be more decisive. He exhaled through his nose. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm sorry. I'm going to need you to come with me." "Don't," Simone said. She had taken out her phone. It was not pointed at anything specific. It was simply out. That's when the door from the kitchen corridor opened and a woman came through it at a pace that was technically not running, but had the quality of running. Her name was Adrienne Cole, and she was the Alderton's director of operations. 7 years with the property, the person who had built the dining room's reputation from a hotel restaurant that locals ignored into something that people made reservations for 3 weeks in advance. She was 43 years old, and at this moment her face was the color of a sky before lightning. "Stop." The word landed in the room like something dropped from a height. Rupert stopped. He looked genuinely relieved. "Nobody touches her," Adrienne said. She was already across the room, already between Rupert and the wheelchair. No, not a wheelchair. Celeste was standing. This was different. Celeste was simply standing in an oatmeal cardigan, being asked to leave a hotel she owned, which was its own particular kind of wrong. Adrienne placed herself between Celeste and the stand and looked at the room for exactly 1 second, the way people look when they are deciding what the next 10 years of their life look like. "She owns this hotel," Adrienne said. The dining room did not go quiet. It already was quiet. The people who had been pretending not to watch stopped pretending. Simone made a sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite a sob. Whitney Langford's name tag sat on the stand between them. Nobody picked it up. Upstairs, 20 minutes earlier, the evening had come apart at a specific seam. Adrienne's assistant had received a text from the reservations manager, who had received a call from the system administrator, who had found a discrepancy in the evening's booking log. A reservation under Beaumont, 7 p.m., party of 2, had been in the system since Thursday. It had been removed at 6:52 p.m. The removal was logged to Whitney Langford's access credentials. The assistant had brought her phone to Adrienne mid-conversation with a linen vendor. Adrienne had said 2 words. "Come on." She crossed the hotel in 3 minutes and 11 seconds, which she knew because she checked her watch when she came through the kitchen door, the way you check things you will be asked to document later. Now she stood in the dining room entrance with her hand still on the doorframe and Celeste Beaumont looking up at her with an expression that was not angry and was not relieved and was not surprised. It was the expression of someone who already knew what the answer was and had waited a reasonable amount of time for everyone else to arrive at it. "Ms. Beaumont," Adrian said, "I am so deeply sorry." She stopped herself. There was no sentence that started well from here. "I know," Celeste said simply. Rupert stepped back from the wheelchair, from Celeste, and removed his reading glasses from his pocket, which he did not need, but holding something helped him think. He was going to have to write a report. He was already composing it. The man in the blazer by the partition had put his menu down entirely. A woman at the bar stool nearest Deja leaned over and said something quiet. Deja nodded once. Still watching, Whitney Langford had not spoken. She was standing behind her, stand with both hands flat on the surface the way people stand when the floor has moved. Adrian turned to her. Quietly, the way you say things that don't need an audience. "Did you delete the reservation?" "I was following protocol." Whitney's voice came out steady and then less steady. "Unaccompanied guests without visible hotel room keys are supposed to be verified before." "Did you delete the reservation?" Adrian said again. The dining room heard every word. "I didn't know who she was," Whitney said. Her voice had gone somewhere smaller, if someone had told me. "If I'd had any indication." Celeste spoke then. Not to Whitney. To the room, though she was not performing. She was simply tired of the sentence, the one that always came, the one she had been hearing in different versions for 20 years. "That's the thing," she said. "You didn't need to know who I was. You needed to check the system. You needed to do the job." She looked at Whitney then, directly. "You had my name. You had a keyboard. You used neither." The walnut partition seemed taller somehow. The chandelier scattered light across the floor, and nobody looked at it. Whitney opened her mouth. Something about procedure. Something about protocol. Something about the way the words came out too high and too fast and landed nowhere. Adrian put her hand up, very gently. "Whitney, go wait in my office, please." Whitney picked up her name tag from the stand. Her hand was not entirely steady. She walked through the dining room and nobody looked away, and she made the full length of it before she pushed through the kitchen door and disappeared. Deja came around the bar end with 2 menus. She arrived at Celeste's elbow and said, "Your table is ready, Ms. Beaumont." "I'm sorry you waited." "Thank you," Celeste said. She looked at the younger woman for a moment. "Deja." "Yes, ma'am." "You stayed at the near end of the bar." Deja glanced toward where she had been standing. "I couldn't hear what was happening from the far end," she said simply. Celeste nodded. That was the right reason they followed her to a table by the window, the kind of table that looks out over Peachtree and the October dark and the long string of headlights moving north through the city. Simone sat down and put her phone face down on the table and looked at her mother. "You knew she was going to do that," Simone said. "I thought she might," Celeste said. "I hoped she wouldn't. And you still wore the cardigan." Celeste picked up the menu. "I always wear the cardigan," they ordered. Simone had the duck. Celeste had the snapper. The food was, as it had been reported to be, very good, and they talked about Simone's apartment renovation and a book they were both reading and the particular difficulty of finding good curtains in Atlanta, which was, Simone insisted, an underappreciated problem. At 8:40, Adrian stopped by the table. She was quieter now, the composure rebuilt but thinner than it had been. "The situation is being handled, Ms. Beaumont. The reservation log has been fully documented. HR has been notified." She paused. "The board is going to want to speak with you Monday." "I imagine they will," Celeste said. She looked at Adrian for a moment. "You moved fast." Adrian shook her head slightly. "Not fast enough. You moved faster than you needed to, which is all I can ask." Celeste set her fork down. "Who told you?" "The reservations manager. He caught the deletion in the access log. He was the one who called upstairs." "What's his name?" "Gerald Osey," Adrian said. Celeste took out her phone and typed the name. It was the only note she made all evening. The phone Simone had left face down on the table had been doing quiet, significant work throughout dinner. She had recorded 14 seconds outside the hostess stand before things resolved. A table near the partition had recorded 40. Deja, it turned out, had recorded 91 seconds from the bar, though she had told no one, and her footage began 3 seconds before Whitney had deleted the reservation on her screen, visible in the background if you knew what you were looking for. The footage did not go up that night. Celeste made one phone call at 9:15, and what she said was, "Hold it, let's do this the right way." The right way took 8 days. What the review found was not a single bad evening. Whitney Langford's access logs told a particular story. 6 reservation deletions in 14 months, all connected to tables for black guests, all logged within an hour of the reservation time, all attributed to system error in the incident reports she had filed herself. 2 guest complaint forms that had never left her drawer. A note in Deja's personnel file placed there 4 months ago, citing unprofessional conduct. Dated the same week, Deja had reported a seating complaint to the floor manager. The pattern did not need interpretation. It sat in the review file like something that had been waiting for someone to look at it directly. Whitney Langford was terminated on a gray Thursday morning. She did not receive a public walk. Celeste had been specific about that. Process, not spectacle. The consequences, she said, should be proportionate and documented, and they should be real, but they should not be entertainment. Whitney gave an interview 3 weeks later to a podcast that had reached out specifically because of the story. She said, being made an example of. She had used the system the way everyone used the system. The only difference was that this time the guest turned out to be the owner. She had been set up, she said, by a culture that was now pretending it hadn't taught her everything she knew. It was the most honest thing she had said in a long time. The severance board noted that she had said it into a recorded microphone. Some people mistake confession for defense. The footage went public on a Tuesday morning, released through the Alderton's own communications team, alongside a statement from the new majority owner. Not the 91 seconds of dining room footage. A 4-minute version, cut from 3 angles, that began with the chandelier and the reservation log, and ended with Gerald Osie's call to Adrian's office. It was not dramatic. That was what made it land. Celeste's statement was 1 paragraph. What happened at the Alderton last Thursday happens to people every day. The only unusual detail is that the woman who was told to move along happens to own the building. I am less interested in that detail than in the 6 previous incidents that no one flagged until someone with my name in the ownership documents walked through the door. We're going to fix the building. Watch what we do next. What they did next took the better part of a year. Every reservation system in all 8 Meridian South properties was audited for deletion patterns. 3 other anomalies were found across the portfolio, none as extensive as the Aldertons, all addressed. Every guest-facing employee in the company attended a 2-day training. Not a webinar, not a module, not a slide deck with a quiz at the end. Real sessions, run by real people who had real stories about being turned away from real rooms, and who sat across tables from the staff and talked until something in the room changed. The Alderton's dining room entrance was redesigned, not because there was anything physically wrong with it, but because Celeste had stood there in an oatmeal cardigan for 11 minutes, while the hostess stand operated as a checkpoint, and she wanted the entrance to feel like an entrance and not a test. The Director of Guest Experience position was new. The job description was written by Adrian and approved by Celeste on a Tuesday afternoon over coffee. It took them 4 hours because they kept arguing about a single sentence in the mission statement, which Celeste eventually won by pointing out that she was the one who signed the checks. They offered the job to Deja. She was 26 years old and had been working the bar at the Alderton for 2.5 years and had 9 months left on her hospitality management degree. She accepted on a Wednesday and started the Monday after she finished her last final. at a salary that made her call her mother from the parking lot. Her first act in the new role was removing the reservation deletion permission from all Hostess credentials across the property. From now on, cancellations required a manager authorization. She did not make a speech about it. She submitted a policy memo that took her 40 minutes to write and cost nothing to implement. Her second act was putting a photograph on the wall behind the new check-in addition they had built at the dining room entrance. A low counter on the left side of the stand, level so that a person in a wheelchair, or a child, or anyone shorter than the original stand had been designed for, could see the person behind it at eye level. The photograph was of a glass of water on a marble surface. Just that. No caption. Gerald Ossie, the reservations manager who had caught the deletion in the access log, was promoted to Systems Integrity Director for the full Meridian South portfolio. He accepted with the particular quiet satisfaction of a man who had done the right thing once and been afraid it wouldn't matter and now knew that it had. At his first portfolio meeting, Celeste asked him why he'd checked the log in the first place. "It didn't look right," he said. "Reservations don't just disappear on a Thursday." "No," she said. "They don't." She wrote that down too. Rupert, the security officer, kept his job. The review noted that he had been given false information, that he had moved with reluctance throughout the encounter, and that in his incident report he had written, in the summary box, "Guest had valid reservation confirmed by access log. Security intervention was not appropriate. I should have requested verification before proceeding. Submitted for record." It was the most useful document generated that evening, and it was written by the man who had almost done the thing it was sorry for. He tells the story at new hire orientations now. He tells it the same way every time. He says, "I was given a reason to do the wrong thing, and it felt reasonable, and I almost did it." That's how it usually goes. The way to not do it is to ask one question first. He always pauses there. The question he didn't ask was, "Can I see the reservation?" Simone was at the Alderton the following spring for a work event. She stopped by the dining room on her way out and asked to see the Hostess stand. The young man working it looked puzzled but showed her. She looked at the low counter, the new sight lines, the reservation screen, visible from both sides now by design. "My mother owns this hotel," she said. He nodded slowly, not entirely sure what she was telling him. "She's the one who built this counter," Simone said. "She was here on a Thursday in October in a $4 cardigan. You would have liked her." She tipped him $20 on a glass of water and left. In December, the Atlanta Business Chronicle ran a profile. Not the story of the Alderton evening, which had been covered everywhere by then, but a story about the portfolio, about Meridian South, about 8 hotels across the Southeast that had been invisibly transformed over 10 years by a woman most of the industry had never seen. There was a photograph. Celeste wore the cardigan. She kept a copy of the issue in her office, not framed, in a drawer under the Gerald Ossie policy memo and above the founding documents of Meridian South. When people asked her about it, she said she kept it as a reminder that the best investments she had ever made were the ones nobody saw coming. They usually assumed she was talking about the properties. She was talking about the people. The Alderton's bar still has the best program in Midtown. Wednesday nights, they run a tab for community members who couldn't otherwise afford the menu, started by Dija in the second month of her new role and funded, quietly, by the majority owner. Nobody advertises it. Some things are not for advertising. On a Tuesday in February, a man came through the dining room entrance in paint-stained work clothes and boots that had seen a winter worth of job sites. He stopped at the new lower counter and said, apologetically, that he had a reservation, that he knew he wasn't dressed for the place, that his wife had made the reservation for their anniversary, and he'd come straight from work. Could they maybe seat them somewhere not too visible? He didn't want to embarrass anyone. The hostess pulled up his name in 12 seconds, she said. "Mr. Whitaker, your table is by the window. It has the best view in the room. Your wife is already here." He stood there for a moment. Just a moment. Then he said, "Thank you. Like he meant something more than thank you, she said. Of course. Like she meant exactly what she said. 30 floors up, in an office with a view she had earned twice over, Celeste Beaumont checked the lobby camera feed the way she did some mornings, not looking for problems, just watching the experiment run. The counter was level. The chandelier threw the same old light across the same old floors. The ramp outside had been resurfaced in August, flush with the sidewalk. No lip, nothing for a wheel or a cane or a bad ankle to catch on. The door opened for the man in paint-stained boots without anyone deciding whether to open it. That was the whole point. That was everything. Okay, real talk. It's me, the narrator. You've been watching this story the same way I have, from the outside, from a distance, in the space between what people say and what they actually do. And I want to ask you something. Not about Whitney. Not about what happened at the stand. I want to ask about the man in the blazer, the one who put his menu down and watched and did not look away, and also did not move. Because that's most of us, isn't it? We see it, we know what it is, we just don't know what the one thing we're supposed to do actually is. Here's what I think, and I'm putting this in the comments too. The one thing is small. It's a text to the reservations manager. It's staying at the near end of the bar. It's asking one question before you do the wrong thing. It doesn't cost what we think it costs. If this story found something in you, share it with someone who needed to hear it today. Subscribe to The Final Verdict because there are more stories like this one, and I read every comment, especially the honest ones. Tell me, if you had been at that bar on a Thursday in October, what would you have done? Be real with yourself. The real answers are always the best ones.